If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. I would now like to introduce Catherine Livick of our Professional Development Partner, Education Service District 112 of Vancouver, Washington. Catherine is a Google Certified Trainer and Google Certified Administrator and will take you through an overview of Google Classroom.
Hi everybody, this is Catherine. I'll be showing you my screen here in just a second. There we are. Good morning everybody. I am the Professional Development Manager here at ESD 112, and I do a lot of in-school coaching, which I go to classrooms and schools around the region and actually help teachers integrate Google into their classroom and other technology tools. So I'll be coming at you today from the perspective of someone who has used this in a classroom, as I'm also a certified teacher, and who sees teachers using it in a lot of different ways in their classrooms in a lot of different places. So I hope it will be informative for you. So the first thing that people usually want to know is what actually is Google Classroom. It's, people have heard a little bit about it. They might know a little bit about Google Apps, but Classroom is a little bit of a mystery. So I think the best way to describe what Classroom is that it's what Google uses the term mission control for your class. What it's designed to be is a kind of a small learning management system, if you're familiar with those. It's a web-based platform that can help you integrate Google services that you use with your students, and it helps you to get a digital workflow going in your classroom. I hesitate to use the word paperless because paperless usually means less paper. It doesn't mean no paper, but if you're interested in reducing the amount of paper your students generate, this is definitely a tool you should be looking at. You can create classes in Classroom, add students to them, distribute assignments, and send feedback to your students. And I'll show you a little bit about how that works in the Classroom interface today. So the next question that people usually have when we're talking about Classroom, especially if they're familiar with the Google Apps tools like Docs and Drive and Sheets, is that, well, I already know how to share things with Google with my students, so what's the point of Classroom? And the answer is that it really simplifies things. Excuse me. It helps you to organize everything all in one place. Your students have one place on the computer to go and interact with you, interact with each other if you choose to let them do that, and to find all their assignments. Nothing gets lost. It's just a really nice way to keep things all in one spot for everybody. It also integrates with Google Calendar and with Gmail to give you a system of notifications and to keep things organized on a schedule for you. They keep releasing new features all the time, and this is the joy and the scary part of Google, is that they're always releasing new stuff, and it's usually great, but they don't always give us a lot of warning. So they have talked about adding some things like a parent interaction component or an integrated grade book, because they have a place for you to put grades, but it doesn't connect with other student information systems at this time. And we do anticipate that they'll be adding that sort of thing. And we'll talk about the limitations towards the end too. But it's pretty easy to learn right now, and I think that's really one of the major advantages of Google Classroom. So if you're in a district where you have a Google Apps for Education account, if you have Docs and Drive and all that stuff associated with your work email. This should be pretty easy to find. Because Classroom is only associated with education accounts, you often can't find it in the app launcher, which is the little square or Rubik's Cube box of boxes thing that we have on many of our Google pages to find things. So if you're using Chrome and you're logged in, you should be able to find it by going to classroom.google.com in the Omnibar. And I always suggest that people just go ahead and bookmark it with a star or by dragging it to their bookmarks bar. Remember, when you're logged into Chrome, your bookmarks will follow you to whatever device you're using as long as you're logged into that account in Chrome. So you need to make sure you're logged in and that you're using an education account if you're going to find Google Classroom. Excuse me. And once you do that, this is the kind of the first little tricky part that a lot of people run into. When you first log in, you'll see a screen a little bit like this first picture here. And it will, if you've never logged into Classroom at all, then you'll see this Get Started Using Classroom set of buttons there. And you need to scroll down and select that you are a teacher. And if you are a teacher and you accidentally click Student, you can't fix that. You have to have one of your admins fix it. So try to make sure you click the right button the first time. It's not a disaster, but it will slow you down a bit. And after that, you'll see a screen kind of like that second screen with the chalkboard. And it'll say, create your first class, and there'll be a plus sign there. And when you click it, you'll see that you have the ability to both join and create classes, which is one of the kind of cool things about Google Classroom, and one of the ways that I see it being used is that you can join as a teacher. You can also join other teachers' classes, and I think that's a really good idea. It permits you to see Classroom the way your students see it and really get an idea of what the workflow is like. In all of the districts I work in, we have classrooms set up for professional development purposes for the teachers that we work with. Some buildings use it for a PLC, a professional learning community, and they have them built around grade level or subject area groups so that they can share resources with each other, as well as using Classroom to share resources with their students. So once you're in Classroom, and I'm going to switch over to Classroom itself in just a minute, you'll see that plus sign persisting through most of your screens. And all you have to do to join a class is enter a class code. Makes it pretty easy to get your students into a class or for you to join a class as well. So we're going to go through some of the basics of Classroom. Oops, sorry about that. And we're going to talk about a few of the little pitfalls that you can run into. So I'm going to switch over, and once you're logged in, this is what Classroom actually looks like. I'll give you a little tour of all the buttons and all the good stuff you see here. So up in your top left, you will see Classes, and that's just telling you that this is your list of all the classes you're involved in. If I click the three lines at top left, that's the main menu. You can see Classes is my kind of home base. It's got the little house. If I click the calendar, that will take me to the calendar that is associated with my classrooms and will show me any assignments that I have due week by week. I don't have any in for this week. I just go back to my three lines to look at that home menu. And this sidebar is divided up into classes I am teaching and classes that I am a student in. I don't have any classes that I'm a student in right now, but if I did, you would see below this line, it would say enrolled, and I would have classes listed under there. So these are all classes that I'm teaching, and these are classes that have been archived. When I get to the point where I'm not using a class anymore, I can archive it, and that it doesn't exactly trash it, it just kind of puts it out of circulation, and I can go in and restore it if I would like to use it again, if I have it set up in a way that I like. At the bottom here are my settings. And as you can see, there aren't a lot, not a lot of choices yet with Classroom. You have a choice to receive email notifications or not, and we're hoping that they will increase the number of options there soon so that you can decide what notifications you want. What you'll get if you leave that checked is you'll get emails when someone has submitted an assignment or when a student comments on something. So sometimes you can get quite a few notifications going there, maybe have to work out a filtering scheme for your mail so that that doesn't clutter things up. But a lot of people do like to receive those notifications. And these other settings here are just basic Google account settings. It kind of gives you a shortcut too. So back to my home base here of classes. Over here is my plus where I can join or create a class. Okay, so if I want to join a class with my PLC, I have the Classroom code for it. I can join here, and I would put the code in. If I want to create a class, I would do that right here. And it will start asking me some questions. I just have to give it a name. I don't have to give it a section, but I can. Often the question that is asked at this point is, well, how do I set this up? Especially for teachers in middle school, they'll say, well, do I just have one classroom for all of the classes I teach, or how should I set it up? And that kind of depends on what you're teaching and how many students you have, how your day is organized, and what kind of devices you're using. So Classroom is generally intended to be used with a 1-to-1 or close to that device ratio. And a lot of the classrooms in which I see it being used are classes that have Chromebooks or some other kind of device, 1-to-1. Every child can use one at the same time. So it tends to be used more for that. But of course it can be used for a lot of other kinds of resource organizing. And I always tell teachers that it's probably best to organize by subject or by class period so that they can keep things kind of straight, since it's so easy to add students. Even if you have some of the same students, for instance, in your history class as your English class, you can easily add them or have them add themselves with a join code. And that way you can keep things very straight between which class you're assigning things to. So that's usually my recommendation, but of course you can set it up however you like. When you start a new class, it'll ask you if you want to take a tour, and I'm not going to start the tour. Every now and then it'll pop up a little, hey, here's a tip kind of thing when you first start using it, so if you see those, that's what those are. And when I first have a class, I have no students in my class, excuse me, I just have my stream, my students, and my About tab to look at here. And I have the opportunity to change my theme. And I always show this to people right off the bat. It seems kind of foofy, but sometimes it's really important to have some color coding, to have some visual cohesion, so that maybe my English class is blue and my math class is red or something. So I have some visual cueing that makes my classes look different. And Google, being Google, has these great themes for us. You can choose, you can go with the default one that it assigns, or you can choose any of these, and it'll change the all the colors to kind of match the photo, or you can always upload your own photo if you have something that you think is relevant to your subject matter. You can totally do that. So once you have your classes kind of color-coded, it's easier to tell what's going on in that main classes area and just kind of get quickly to a class. This first tab here is my stream, and if I had some things in here, and I'll show you with another class soon, this is where my assignments would show up. This is a stream. It's in a way, I kind of hate to say this because sometimes people recoil, but it's a little bit like a Facebook page or a Facebook feed. It's a chronological list of what is posted in your class with the most current or most recent stuff at the top. So if I put an assignment in here, it'll show up, and all of my students will see it at the top of their feed for this class too. If I choose to allow students to post on my wall, which I do not have to, I can make a judgment based on the maturity level of my students and the needs of my class. Those things would also show up here. So this is just my main page. My stream is where all my stuff shows up for everyone. There will always be a little heads up here about any work that is due soon. I have one option here with my stream whether I can show deleted items just for me, and it tells me right here with a little tooltip, only teachers can view deleted items. And here's my class code, which is always here for me. And if I click in the Students tab, my class code is always right there at the top too. I can reset this class code at any time. So if I have enough people in my class and I want to prevent anyone else from joining using that code, say I'm the coolest teacher in the school and everybody wants to join my class and I'm getting overwhelmed, I can reset it to a different code anytime. And just click and it'll change it for me. Or I can disable the code entirely and prevent people from joining using a code. Over here in my Students tab, this is where all my students are listed if I have any. Right now, since this is a brand new fresh class, I don't have any. It tells me I can invite students or give them this code. If I invite them, it's going to pop up this dialog and kind of start showing me contacts and groups that I have, and I can start adding students that way. Classroom is designed to be used within a single domain, and what that means is that by default you can only add students that are in the same school district that you are. There is a way to work around this for certain situations. Sometimes we have colleges or schools that have a magnet program that they share with other districts, and if they do something on the administrative end, they can add students from another district. But by default, you should only be able to add your students or other teachers in your domain to your class. It's private to your district. If you don't want to invite students, the easy way to get them in your class, especially for students say 4th or 5th grade and above, it's usually very easy to have them type in their own code. You just make sure that they can see this code, either email it out to them, write it on the board, anything that works for you, and then you talk them through finding that plus sign and putting their code into the join class box. It's pretty easy to do, and I've had pretty good success with students down to 3rd, 4th grade entering that code. It's not a long code, fortunately. It's not very many digits, so people are usually able to get it in pretty well the first time. So you have some options for adding your students there, and once we have students in, we have some things that we can do, and I'll show you that in another class. When you get to your About tab here, this is the stuff that kind of persists throughout the entire class. If this is where I would put the title of my class, a description, the room where it meets, and I can add materials here. For instance, I could add a syllabus or any kind of document that I want students to have access to throughout the class. I can attach things directly from my Google Drive. I could attach a video. If I wanted to record a welcome video for a class, that would be easy to do. I can attach a link or any other kind of document from my actual computer. And I can also invite a co-teacher to teach my class with me. So this is really great if you share students or if you have a co-teaching situation. The co-teacher will have all of the privileges you have except to delete the class. So that can be a pretty handy feature. I'm going to go back to my main class menu here, and I'm going to look at a class that has some students in it so you can see a little bit more about what this stream looks like. So this is a demo class that I've used in a few different classes I've taught. So it's kind of, there's not a lot of real assignments in here, but you can see kind of what the stream looks like. So this is my stream. Most recent thing I posted here was October 15th. And as a teacher, I have the view of seeing who's done, how many students are done, how many students are not done. Nobody has done this assignment for me yet. The due date pops up for me. right here in the corner, I have some options for editing or deleting this assignment. I have a Google Doc attached to it. I can add a comment that all of my students will see. Here's some other assignments. So I go through here. So you can see that it's chronologically going from most recent to least recent. In my Students tab, I have a couple of students here. It's not the real Janis Joplin. Sorry to disappoint anyone. So I have some options here for what I can do with my students. If I select one of my students, this Actions button is made available to me. And I can remove Janis from my class. I can send her an email straight from here or using that little email button over on the end. Or I can mute her if she is saying naughty things on my feed or in any of my comments. I can make it so she loses the ability to post while leaving the other students that ability. So you have some control over that. I can also make that choice for the entire class in my Students tab once I have added students. And this is a feature that I find teachers asking me about a lot because they don't see it before they invite students. And then after they invite students, they don't look for it until they need it. And so they kind of forget where it is. So after you add students, that shows up on your Students tab. And you can give your students the ability to post and comment, which means they can add a new post to the feed, which will come to the very top of your stream. Or you can allow them only to comment on things you have posted. A lot of teachers leave it this way so that students can ask questions of the teacher if an assignment has been posted and they're confused about something. Of course, they could always send you an email, so you don't have to have public questions if you don't want to. And you can also set it so that only the teacher can post or comment. If you don't feel that your students need the ability to post in the stream or can't handle the ability to post in the stream, that's always a possibility. So we have a little bit of detail in the demo class about tab. I have the room that I'm meeting. It's a cyber class, so it's in space. I have a Google Drive folder that's associated with it, and more on that in just a second. And I have a syllabus, which is a Google Doc that I've attached. Anytime I want to, I can edit this, I can change it, I can delete that document, add a different one. If students are in this About tab, they can view it just like this. This is not a real syllabus, but it does have puppies. I like to put puppies everywhere I can. So anything that you want to attach to your class can go there. So back to this Google Classroom folder. Google Classroom creates folders in your Drive to organize your assignments and the things that you post as well as what the students return to you. And Google doesn't tell you this, but you really need to not ever touch that folder. And this is my Google Drive. And this is this particular class's folder. If I back out of it, you'll see here are all the other classes that I'm teaching. And each one of them has other things within it, depending on what's been done in the class. I have my classroom folder. When it's first created, it'll show up in your Drive at the top level. I just recommend that people don't touch it at all. People tend to want to drag things in and out and organize it and move it around, but what that will do is confuse Classroom itself and make it so that you can't find stuff. So please just take my word for it. Don't mess with the Classroom folder unless you absolutely have to. You can certainly go in and read things and, you know, look at the results of your assignments in there if anyone has turned one in. There will be something in there, but just don't move anything because that will cause you problems. So you'll, in every classroom that you will have a link to the Google Drive folder. Feel free to go look at it, but please don't move stuff. So I'm going to go back to the stream. Excuse me. And here is where I would do my assigning of stuff to my class. I have some options down here with my plus sign in the bottom right. And some of these have been recently added, so if any of you looked at Classroom, 6 or 8 months ago and go, wow, it looks a little bit different, this is one of the things that is different. My first option down here on the bottom is to create an announcement. And an announcement doesn't really have a due date associated with it. It's just something that I want my class to see on the stream when they check my classroom. So, hey, don't forget your permission slip for the field trip, or hey, remember we have a test coming up next week and you need to study. Anything that you just want to tell them, you can type here, and you can choose, if you have multiple classes, for any of these, which classes need to get this announcement. So if this was an announcement that every class I'm teaching need to get, I could put a check mark by all of them and send it to all of them at once. Pretty handy. I can save this as a draft if I want to come back to it later. I can post it immediately. I can attach a file, a Google Drive, a product of any sort, docs, sheets, slides. I can attach a YouTube video or a link, and then I can post it, and it will show up in my feed. So here's an announcement. And it's always going to give me this little black bar that pops up and says, hey, something happened, something's been updated. So you get a little status update as you do that. If your students are logged into Classroom, they'll get a little black bar that says stream updated, and if they click that, it'll refresh it for them and they'll see the new post. So back to my plus sign here. I did an announcement. Let's create an assignment. So with the assignments, I have a due date associated, and I just have to name my assignment, maybe give a description and some instructions, and this can be as detailed as is appropriate for whatever you're doing with your class. And then I can attach an assignment to it. So I'm going to add my test assignment. Here is where the directions would go. I would probably be a little more detailed than that in reality. I'm going to set a due date. I can set a time as well. So if I want students to work on this till midnight and then that's the cutoff, or 3 p.m. or whatever, I can change that here. And now I'm going to decide what kind of an assignment I want to attach. So for my purposes, I often use a Google Drive file. And I will often attach a document. And once I attach a document, I have some choices. So it depends on what kind of a document I'm attaching. If the document is something I want them to actually type in, I have to make a different choice than if I just want them to read it. So I can give them the choice just to view the file, which means that all my students will be looking at the same copy of the file, but they can't do anything to it. I can give them editing privileges, and we need to be very careful about this because that means they're all editing the same Google Doc. And if you've been using Google Docs in your classroom and you have ever given editing privileges to your entire class on one document, I'm sure you have witnessed the chaos that can create. It can also be kind of fun, but it's not always productive, so we have to be very careful about that. And the most common option that people use is to do make a copy for each student. And what that does is it basically is like walking to the digital copying machine, making a copy and passing it out to every student in this class. They'll get to see it and they will get to edit it. So if I have, for instance, a writing prompt that I've typed up on a Google Doc, and I can say, hey, here are your instructions for this. Go ahead and delete these instructions and then write whatever it is I'm asking them to write. They'll all have their own copy. And the reason to do this is because you retain more control over what is going on with the document during this digital workflow. So I'm going to make a copy for each student. I could also attach a video if I wanted to for additional directions or background. I can attach more than one thing. I'm not sure what the limit is. I haven't hit it yet. I think I've attached 4 things to a single assignment. Of course, you want to make sure you're not confusing people, but that is possible to do. I can, again, select more than one class. If you teach more than one section of the same class, you can send the same assignment out to multiple classes at once. So once I'm sure I've just selected make a copy for each student of this document, I have a due date, assignment, and directions. I can either save a draft or I can just hit assign. And once I have sent my assignment out, it appears in the stream. I get a little update, and students would see this in their stream. They would be able to click on this and open it. Now, what this does, and because we have kind of limited time, I'm not going to take you through the whole student side of it, but this is why I really encourage people to create classes and join each other's classes so they can see the student side. What will happen if a student clicks on this is that they'll get their own copy of it that only they're editing, and it will have up by the share button, it will have a turn in button. It would show up kind of up in here. And whatever they are supposed to do in this piece of this document here, they would finish that and then they would click turn in. What that does is it alerts me that they have finished it, and it gives me the opportunity to check the assignment, to give them feedback, return it, ask them to turn it in again if necessary. It connects that document to this assignment in Google Classroom, and that's what creates our digital workflow. This is one of those things that it's kind of hard to understand exactly how it works until you have gone through it a couple of times. So if it seems a little confusing, be patient with yourself and just kind of play around with it and join each other's classes and see how it works. So let's see, I have an assignment here where somebody has done the assignment, and I'm going to show you what my grading screen kind of looks like. I have 0 students not done, 2 students done, so good job on that, students. And here are my 2 students listed on this side and the assignment over here. If it says no attachments, but if there was a Google Doc attached to this, it would be right here. I could click right into it. I could go look at it and view it, comment on it, just like I can with any other Google Doc, return it with feedback to Janice, and then ask her to either turn it in again or give her a grade. The grades default like this, but you can change them if you want to. This grade book does not unfortunately feed out to anything else. So if you're using a student information system, an online grade book for your district, it doesn't really directly talk to any of those yet. We're hoping they will add that feature very soon. But you do have a couple of options here with your little gear, your little sprocket on the right side. I can download the grades for this assignment, and it will download a CSV, or it will do that, but hopefully it won't be doing that anymore. Normally what that would do is download a CSV file, which is something that you can open with Excel, so it's a spreadsheet, and many of the student information systems that we use connect with that. You can upload that into your gradebook, or some people just prefer to enter things after the fact. It's completely up to you. When I'm done grading these assignments, I can select the assignment that I want to return, hit the return button, the student gets a notification, and they know that they got a grade and they have completed that assignment. If I want to go back and review the instructions, which mine are not very specific, say I'm not getting very good results from the instruction for that assignment, I can go back and edit the instructions, make it a little more specific. This is one of those things that you have to kind of mentally adjust to when you're doing a digital workflow if it's a new thing for you. That something that you would explain one way in class physically to students might need a different level of detail when explained via the internet. And so it's a little bit trial and error. And I do encourage you, again, to be gentle with yourself, and we'll talk a little bit about how you might start trying to use this in your classroom. But there's nothing like practice to get it right. Back to our stream and our plus sign down here. We have created an announcement. We've created an assignment. Let's create a question. Now, these aren't too much different than the other types of things that we can post to our stream, but what this does is permits you to allow students to have a discussion on the stream or on the feed. So if I wanted to ask a discussion question here and then give them some details about how I want them to answer it, I could do that. So I could tell them, here is your discussion question. Please post one response, at least one response by this date, and in your response include these details. If I do that, I can allow the students to respond to one another or not, depending on how I want this to go. If I click see and reply to each other's answers, then the teacher or the students in this question can actually have a discussion with each other. They can comment on each other, just like, I hate to say it, but just like a Facebook wall, only hopefully a little more educationally appropriate most of the time. You could also give students the capacity to edit their answers if they want to make a change. And this goes in kind of as an assignment where you can actually keep track of who has responded and who hasn't. And that's the difference between it just being a regular post on the wall, if you allow students to post, and you actually initiating a discussion that students can participate in. Often with a question, you can attach a video and ask them to respond to that, or read something, a link to a website that you'd like them to read and then respond to. So it doesn't just have to be the question that you type in. There's a lot of other goodies that you can attach there. Back to my plus sign, my last option here is to reuse a post. And this is kind of great. It shows me all of my classes. So say I put something over here in my history class and I wanted to reuse it in a different class. I can go into that class and then, whoops, and I don't have any in there, but I can go into my class and I can find a post either in the class that I'm in or in a different class. And I can choose an assignment, reuse it. It'll create new copies of the attachments for me. And then it'll create a new draft post for me. And I can change it slightly, I can assign it to a different class, or most importantly, the thing that I see this used most often for is when people forgot to do this. You cannot go back when you edit an assignment and change this option. So if I accidentally did this and I really wanted to do this, I'm going to have to go and delete that post and start over. But say I typed a really excellent set of instructions here, I don't want to retype it, I can go in and reuse the post, just change this option, repost it, delete the old one. Kind of is a workaround, makes it a little bit easier for me if I've made a mistake, as we often do. So that's the basic workflow of Google Classroom. And I just want to make a few comments before I turn it back over to Stephanie and Anna. I would encourage you, like I said, to join each other's classes, see it from the student perspective. That's kind of the tricky part if you haven't done this yet, to kind of imagine how that would look from a student perspective. I always encourage teachers to start with a very low stakes assignment, maybe an entry task or something that that isn't a huge deal if it doesn't go well, because there sometimes can be hiccups. Don't be afraid to try it, but be prepared for things to take a little more time, especially if your students are not super familiar with Google Apps and how the Google Apps work already. This can be a bit of a learning curve for them. So don't give in to the myth of the digital native. Your kids need to learn it just like you do. We can all be patient with each other. And I think if you practice with this a little bit, you'll find that your students will think it's very engaging, they'll enjoy it, and they'll even rise to the occasion and be pretty appropriate in posts and comments on your feed most of the time, even if you're a little concerned about that. It usually goes better than we think. So again, find kind of a low-stakes introduction. If it's an entry task that would normally take 5 or 10 minutes, give yourself 20. Make sure that you add in time for logistics like getting your Chromebooks out of the cart and started up and all that good stuff. Once you've done that a couple of times, you will really start to see the potential of what this tool can do for you. And I think that'll be a really great tool for all of you to use. So I hope that that's helpful, and I'm going to turn it back over to Anna and Stephanie.
Okay. Thanks, Catherine. We're going to begin the Q&A section. We already have a few questions, and I just want to remind everyone that you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. The first question that we got was from Jim Robb, and he's wondering about when you were talking about not moving anything in the Google Docs folders when you're sharing. He asks, why don't you put a lock on the Google Doc folder for a classroom to prevent moving or changing it?
I so wish that they would do that. It's not really something that you can do in your drive. You, as the owner of your drive files, just have to know kind of not to mess with it. I have actually put in multiple feature requests, and if you look at a screen in Google Classroom, you'll see a little question mark down at the bottom right when you open up your 3 lines menu. That's the feedback link, and I highly encourage you to use it liberally and all the time, because they actually do pay attention, especially to what teachers want, because they're creating this tool for us. And I have submitted feedback, as have a lot of people I know, saying, would you please at least tell people not to mess with that stuff, or make it, if not locked, put a warning on it. So yeah, that's a feature that's been requested, but I don't know why it's not addressed yet.
Okay. And then another question that came in from Doran McBride is about the assignments, and they ask, can the assignment document be anything in Google Drive, including spreadsheets and PDFs?
Yeah, you can attach any file that's in your drive or on your computer. You can attach a map or a slide presentation or a PDF or an image, anything that you want to do, whether it's in your drive or on your computer. You have the little paper clip to upload any kind of attachment just from your hard drive, or if you're on a Chromebook or just have everything in your Google Drive, anything that's in there is usually fair game. There are probably a couple limitations to that, but they recently removed a lot of them, and I have not gone and pushed the envelope on that again for a couple of weeks, so I'm not sure what we would run into, but I haven't run into any big problems with that recently.
Okay, good to know. This other question is also from Jim Robb about your grading reports. What kind of reports do you have for grades, and can you export grades to another system?
Where I showed you the little gear in the top right there of an assignment page, that's how you can export them. And they come in a spreadsheet format, so it's a CSV. It's just basically a list of names and grades for a given assignment. There is a file, you can export all assignments for a given class, I believe, into one CSV file. That would open in Excel, and then of course, or in Google Sheets, and you can do whatever you want with that data at that point. We've created a little workflow for turning that into a bar graph, or any kind of a visual organizer that you want. So once it's in your spreadsheet program, you can do anything that your spreadsheet program will do with it, but that's up to you. I do hope that they'll kind of add some features there.
Okay, great. The next question is kind of more of a comment or a suggestion, I think. Chris Brown is saying what would really be nice is if Classroom would notify teachers when a late assignment is turned in. Is that a feature that will be available?
Well, if students are late, if the due date has passed and you go look at your teacher view on an assignment, it does say late by the assignments for students that have not yet turned it in. When they turn it in, you'll get a notification, although I don't think it says late specifically in that notification, but it's just because it's after the due date. What some people have been asking for is that if I go in and I check through all my assignments, I don't have email notifications on. and I mark it as I've reviewed that assignment, and then I get some late assignments, it doesn't give me another notification, hey, this late person turned their stuff in. So you just have to remember to go back and check it. So that's, again, another feature that I know multiple teachers have requested, and I know that they are considering.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Mhm.
Okay, so the next, you're getting some good questions here. The next question is from Jason Wainio. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. Wainio. What are some of the ground rules you put in place when students are collaborating on a shared Google Doc?
Oh, that's an awesome question, and that kind
Yeah.
of reaches outside of classroom too. It's so dependent on the students you have and the age level you have. I started using Google stuff with sixth graders, and if any of you teach sixth graders, you know that they can be a little wacky. And I mean that in a loving way, because I taught middle school for 15 years, and I love middle schoolers, but they push things. In my experience, we start with a whole kind of basic concept of civility in my classroom, and how we treat one another generally is not any different than how we treat one another in the digital realm. And then we kind of expand into digital citizenship. When we got Chromebooks in our classroom, of course, it's not just Google Classroom. You have a lot of other platforms that students are using, and you have to talk about what's appropriate to share, what's not appropriate to share, how and I think the fact that things don't disappear off the internet was something that we emphasized. So by the time we actually got to using shared Google documents, I did put them all into a document and let them kind of bump into each other and say, hey, he deleted my stuff, and I said, okay, so why don't you tell me what the rules should be for how we collaborate on these documents? And they came up with their own, and they said, well, don't delete anything that you didn't write, use a comment instead of changing something. That kind of basic stuff works across the Google platform and in all the collaborative platforms, I think. And a couple of times we had students commenting on things and saying inappropriate things, and my response to that was to screenshot them. And then the next day we would have a very teachable moment, and I would say, how much would you like me to send this home to your mom? That's one of those. And I literally had to do that one time, even with sixth graders. That was the only time we had that discussion, and everything was just grand from there on out. So I really believe in letting kids figure out as much of it as they can on their own and letting them rise to the occasion. In my experience, having them come up with those rules was really helpful. I hope that answers the question.
Definitely. Yeah, it sounds like a really good learning opportunity, more than just the technology. Okay, we're going to try to get through a few more here. From Steve Ripple, is it possible to transfer ownership of a class?
I don't know. Hi, Steve. I don't know if you can actually transfer it. But if you have a co-teacher, like I said, a co-teacher has complete ownership of the class except for deleting it. As far as from the admin perspective, if you transfer a person's documents, I think their classroom folder would go to the new owner as well. But as far as whether that would show up on the classroom end of things, I don't know. That's a good question, and I would like to look into that.
Okay. And there's a quick follow-up from Doran McBride when he was asking about, what format the document could be, including spreadsheet and PDF, and then he followed up with, and that will make copies just as with docs. So I think he's saying,
I see, yeah. I believe, and I haven't tried it for a while, but I believe that making a copy for each student only works with Google Files. But like I said, it's been a while since I tried it. That was the case a while ago. They do like to add features all the time, and they don't always announce it. Sometimes we just have to stumble across them. But I don't think that it would make a copy for every student unless it's a Google file.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, just a couple more. I think we can stay in our time frame. From Ken Russell, how does Google Classroom features compare to other LMS like Moodle and Canvas?
Oh, can you let me just really quickly, Stephanie? I actually just went in since you're not looking at my screen now, but I thought, let me just try this. And I actually attached a PDF that was in my drive, and it's giving me the option to make a copy for each student. I don't believe if it was a PDF from my hard drive that it would give me the same option, but in your Google Drive it looks like it does. So let me amend that answer.
That's great.
I'm sorry. So how the question was, how do the features of Classroom compare to what, Canvas or
and Moodle, yeah, to other LMS?
Well, most of my experience LMS-wise is with Schoology, so I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. I'm not an expert on Canvas by any means, but I'm a little bit familiar with it. And Google Classroom is limited in its feature set compared to those other platforms. It does not do as much stuff. But it does a lot more stuff than it did a couple months ago. So if you catch my drift, they're constantly adding features. And it's a much shorter learning curve than any of those other learning management systems. One of the things that I hear frequently requested that people are really concerned about, and so the one thing is that the gradebook is a little bit of a dead end, that it doesn't directly import to an SIS. So I think that's something that they're working on addressing, because I know a lot of people have that concern. And the other thing is the lack of a parent component. I know in Schoology, and I believe in Canvas as well, there's a parent view, so a parent can join your class as a parent, be associated with their student, and see a parent view of when things are due and how their kid did on an assignment. Google doesn't have any options for that at this time, because you can't add someone, for instance, with a Gmail address. Like if I'm the parent with my Gmail address, I can't join the class. And there's no way to designate someone as anything other than a student or a co-teacher. So I know that Google has gotten a lot of feedback about that, and I would hope that they would add that soon. But there are some features that you're not going to see here. I think the advantage, though, is that it's so easy to learn and that it integrates so smoothly with all the Google stuff. So if you're pretty heavily into Google Apps, it's definitely worth looking at, even if you're used to those other LMSs.
Okay, and then here's the final question that was submitted by Ricky Villacourt. Do you have email notifications on for your classes? And if so, do you have a filter set up in your Gmail account?
I do have them on, but I don't use my classes like a regular classroom teacher would, because I'm using them to demo with teachers. And I also have about 10 classrooms in about 5 different districts, so if I actually had active classes in all of those places, I would definitely turn it off, because it's a bombardment. That is exactly what I teach people to do, is to set up a filter, so in Gmail or in whatever email program their district is using, to filter those notifications into a folder for them. And a lot of people are in their classrooms often enough that they don't feel the need to have the notifications. They just review their assignments within each class and kind of have a workflow set up for themselves that way and keep track of it that way. And so for some people, that's easier.
Okay, well, I think this concludes our Q&A, and pass it back over to Anna for the wrap-up.
Great. Thank you, Steph. And thank you, Catherine, and everyone for attending today's webinar and overview of Google Classroom. If you have any other questions, please contact me at aroach@ctl.net. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate it if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to review a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of CTL and our presenters, thank you for joining us today, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.